Hi, my name is Benedict, looking at the Waves Studio Rack. It's been around for some time, but it's been a Waves thing. They've now opened it up so that it will load VST3 devices. And I thought, okay, that's kind of interesting. Obviously, up till now, I had not paid any attention to it because Waves and I don't get on super well for a couple of reasons. One of them being that stuff that I've bought I can't actually install. Yes, in theory I can, but after having tried it about 5 times over a couple of years, I can never actually make it work. Follow the instructions, it doesn't work, whatever. No biggie. I don't think the devices are really that special. This is a little bit interesting, and in certain ways quite well done. And from a reason user's point of view, possibly not very well done at the same time. So there's some swings and roundabouts in here, but there is a charm that it possibly does have a space for certain people. So what we've got is fairly simple, and I haven't spent a lot of time, as is fairly usual for me when I do reviews. I have not read the manual, so there are some things that have come out differently from what I've expected, or differently from what happens in Reason. But that could be a good reason to have something if it works differently. So we're going to work around this sound. This is the same sound. It's split to 3 different destinations, one being what we call dry, 2 being through the studio rack, which we can bypass here. So no noticeable difference, as one would anticipate, and 3 being off through a reason-based combinator recreation of what I did here, which oddly enough doesn't recreate the same. And I don't know what I've done. I've looked at everything. The stereo seems different. That may be because of something that I haven't read about and don't understand, because there's some kooky stuff in here that is not immediately apparent. Not necessarily wrong, but not immediately apparent. Obviously, mono sound, nice, but lacking in character. This obviously opens the sound up and gives it a nice character. So let's look at what we've done. One of the things that they talk about is that you've got various ways to split the signal. We can do a parallel split, which is like this. So we're going to have the same thing go into each, and you can have multiple bands thereof. I haven't looked at how many, and do some basic mixing on that. In this case, you insert your effect within these slots. We're not going to use that one. Right click to remove and it goes away. There is a macro, so just like a combinator, but nowhere near as cool as Combi 2, you can assign up to 8 controls. It seems reasonable enough to be able to do. That bit all works, and then there's a way of seeing both views at once. Mostly, you're probably going to sit on the rack unless you've decided to build a combinator style multi-thing. There's a certain amount of control, so I'm not going to get into that at all because I honestly haven't looked at it. What I've got set up first, and we'll mute these other parts, was just looking at the multi-band splitter. Not a massive band splitter kind of a person, but occasionally I have gotten usage out of multipass, so this seems kind of nice. Again, we can have multiple parts there of, oh, okay. Maybe we need to have not done that. Control Z doesn't work. That's not ideal. And I wish I hadn't done that because I now have no idea how to get rid of it. That's suboptimal, and I gotta say I'm not particularly happy that that's the case, because hang on, no, there is a minus. So what happens if we go minus? All right, it gets rid of whatever's on that end. But what if I wanted to minus this one, not that one? We'd have to rejig. That shows a little sort of lack of syncing or sensitivity. I was assuming that there would be a get rid of this one button, but it's just a broad add one on the end. That was a bit interesting. Or get rid of whatever's on the end. There is a logic to it, but possibly not as well thought through as it could have been. I've seen a lot of things in here that seem nicely thought through. That one I'm not convinced on. Obviously it caught me. Oh, we turn this on. We've got our signal split at 341 Hertz. I've done nothing on the top side except pan and pan, and then added in a reason rack, just a basic straight scream on its default setting. But to stop it from getting too splatty, I have reduced the input drive to it. Okay, cool. So same level there. And because they're panned, there is several functions on this pan, which is sort of cool, sort of possibly confusing. Pan goes to -45, often struggles to actually hit -45. You can always double click to type things in, but it seems like -45 is as far as it goes. I don't know what that means. There's then this upper ring, which we can also move 45. Well, 45 and 45 generally makes 90. It doesn't make 100 or ±50. I don't understand the logic of that one. This one you don't seem to be able to double click to manage its number. So you've got to go backwards and forwards until you can hit 0. I don't understand. And then there's this W button, which when you click it, I don't know what that does. Now, again, I haven't read the manual, but you can use it to invert and move out to 140%. Why 140%? I don't get it. So again, there are several things. Oh, we can actually move one side and not the other. But there's no number on that to be sort of specific. Just find that a little confusing. Now, reading the manual, spending 5-10 minutes doing the old RTFM might resolve all that. But you can hear there's a clear sense of difference. Let's turn these back in how stereo has been handled. Mono, stereo there, stereo there. Now, as far as I'm concerned, all those processes are exactly the same. So there should only be minor differences and not this feeling that the stereo has handled itself completely different. I don't know where that's from. These levels are exactly the same. So all I can conclude is that their pans don't work exactly as expected. We can solo particular bands. Doesn't seem like you can solo several things at once. It's just single solo, fair enough, no dramas there. So I've created a sense of space and I've put a little bit of drive on there. Now maybe it's just level, but in theory I've got all the levels matching, but they don't. So again, there's something funny with the stereo thing. I've then added another reason rack, just adding this reverb. And then a third one with my space tape. Just adding a little bit of to smush it all together. So from here to here, is a very nice transition. That is cool. We can actually drag these things around and they reorder themselves pretty well. Most of the time. Sometimes though you really kind of need to go to an empty slot and then shunt things around, but it has no problems with empty slots. It just ignores them. So that as such is cool. It looks nice. We've got an overall input drive, plus minus 24 dB is definitely healthy enough. There's an overall phase reversal. That's cool. Again, a master bypass or bypassing individual elements. I assume that gain reduction is probably reading any waves compressors. I was going to try and put my basic waves compressor thingy in, but yeah, I can't for the life of me work out how to install it, and it's not worth spending any money to get back. Same with the guitar thing, GTR 3 or whatever it was. I can't even work out what it was. My licenses don't appear to be in my system, so it's like, okay, fair enough. But it's interesting. There's also a sort of somewhat undocumented, I assume that's some sort of output. So we got a trim in, trim at, and then I guess because many people will be seeing this as like making a, what do they call them, channel strips. Okay, fair enough, never saw the need, maybe part because Reason has one. Just channel strips as such, as preset channel strips, don't make a lot of sense to me in digital. They make perfect sense when you have a real analog Neve or SSL or Studio Craft or whatever, because that's what you've got. And then I thought, okay, let's be fair. Let's have a look at what happens if I make a combinator. And, well, essentially the same thing. So we've got a splitter set to as close as I can. I don't think 1 Hertz is going to make a lot of difference. I've pulled out the same minus 11.4 to de-push scream, which is that one there, which we hear over there. And then the other side coming out, so that the pans seem correct. But when you put them back, they seem funny. Maybe it is because there's a phase reversal in here, which doesn't seem to be the case in waves. If I phase reverse that, they sound a lot closer. So maybe that's all it is, just that Scream is prone to creating a phase inversion. But if that's the case, why does it do it here and not there? Unless there's some sort of, oh no, we've noticed the phase is inverted, so we'll flip it back for you kind of thing going on. I mean, if that's the case, I guess that's kind of cool. Nonetheless, it is just a noticeable difference. And then exactly the same presets here and here. And yes, once we've got that phase inversion, it's far more Stephen of even, not the same, but Stephen of even. There's still something in here that I would need to understand. I'd need to RTFM on what all this pan malarkey is, because there seem to be 3 or 4 things going on at once. And while it looks really nice like this, it might be confusing, but then it might not if I just simply did the old RTFM. Fair enough. Like I say, I'm not going to get into the macro at all. One thing I did look at, though, was what happens if I want to do what Reason's so good at and automagicate things. Let's say I want to bring a CV in and send it to a, oh, no, I can't. They don't seem to have exposed things in such a way that Reason can find them. Maybe because they're not defined. Let's just assign input. What happens now? No, still not there. So assigning things seems relatively easy. Assign that to Raisin Rack plugin effect. What's that? Reverb decay. Okay, all cool. That's all working as anticipated. But I did find that you can automate these things in the sequencer. So in terms of automating within a combinator, seems like that might be troublesome. But automating here doesn't seem to be troublesome. It's created a macro thing, hasn't carried its name through, but it has created a macro. So there doesn't seem to be any reason that we could not automate that. Yep, woohoo, look at it fly. All of that is fine and exactly as we would hope to see, but a little confused and or concerned that that seems to be exactly what happens every time. I guess they probably don't see reason very seriously. The other downside that I found from this is that it's only an effect. I thought, oh, okay, this may be a more elegant way of getting something like Surge, the newer versions of Surge, which are only VST3 running. Yeah, I can do it through Cushview Element, but it's not elegant. It works, but it's a pain. And this is a little bit smoother. There's still the annoyance of having to load it to there, to load it to... But it seems a little bit more elegant, but it won't... There doesn't seem to be an instrument version. If I go to try to add an instrument and look for W for waves, there's nothing there. So it is only for effects. So it's really not the equal of combinator in that sense, in that we can't use it to run instruments. Maybe in time it'll open up for that, but it is free. So my thoughts are, it's, for what it does deliver on, it's quite cool, it's clear, it's attractive, you can see what's going on. Sometimes it might be a little slow, like pressing, see, that can be a little time consuming. There were quite a few times where I'd pressed twice. There is something about how it's handling phase reversal and or stereo. I don't know whether it's right or wrong, but it's an interesting enough device. Where it obviously would excel is in being able to use VST3 effects that we can't currently use, and there's no cost other than setting them up and having that extra layer in the process until we can bring them into the device as proper VST, which hopefully is not too far away. But the Wave Studio Rack does work in reason. In most cases, there are some things that just don't seem to want to work at all. Maybe slightly annoying. I haven't tried putting it in a combinator to see what happens, but that's not reassuring. But obviously some things are exposed. So if we created a track for this, which we obviously can't do without doing that, let's see what else is exposed. Only the macros are noted, and then the obvious things, pitch bend, mod wheel. I guess they're just part of the spec. They don't necessarily use them, and these may not do anything, or they may do something. So they're exposed in this way, but they're not exposed there. So it's just a little, I don't know, it's a thing I've noticed. If you find that it doesn't work, you're not alone. It doesn't work. Kind of a cool thing. Obviously no argument with regards to price. Some things they probably could do to improve it a little bit. Like I say, this multi-band split is nice. In many ways it's quite elegant, but the adding one and then not being able to decide which one I get rid of just kind of suggests a little bit of lack of thought about what people are going to want or need to do. So if you make a decision and then want to undo it, Control-Z doesn't work. That I don't love. Oh, you can change GUI size. That's all cool. You can set it as default. Oh, there is the manual. And then Obviously, you can handle your VST3, but you can't. It won't read VST2. So it's not like you can use all your VST in here, it'll only use the VST3. Moving forward, that's probably fine, but just how it's going to be. Let's have a look at the old RTFM. Getting around about automation. Okay, so they indicate that it should work, but obviously it doesn't. At least not in the way that we are used to. That's not a terrible thing. Multi-band split, default crossover range, single flow. Yeah, okay, that's nice. Side chains, whatever. Imaging controls. Okay, stereo. Image on the can be panned and rotated. A stereo with a mono source can be panned but not rotated. Okay, so what's the difference between panning and rotating? Pan between left and right channels, yeah. Turning the knob causes a slight gain decrease in one channel and a corresponding increase in the other. Internal balance. That's part of why the stereo seems different. It doesn't. When working with a stereo component, the S1 lets you move an entire stereo image to change its size asymmetrically and change the width of the image. Indicates the width. Right. I can't say I really understand what they're talking about. They work on the assumption that we should know, but not clear on that one. It works, but there's something confusing. Playing with these several times in a row, I couldn't get a clear sense of what they did. It sort of makes sense, but it sort of doesn't. And that one's not centered. Again, there's a little inconsistency. Like we can double click here to get the number that we want. Double clicking that, it opens up this green thing, but then I don't understand. That's the problem. I just plain don't understand. There are various different ways of it operating, and quite honestly, it feels like to me that they clevered themselves. It definitely fails the user experience test of being able to be clear first time over. My opinion on that is that making it easier for a mix engineer by everything always being obvious and as clear as possible, that one, you get used to it, but that one possibly fails on the beginning, and seeing the manual didn't exactly make it clear. Yeah. But it's free. It does work in certain ways. So if you're sort of going, okay, well, I want to do this kind of thing with VST3s that obviously won't go in combinator or just in Reason at all, it's a pretty viable sort of a stopgap. Hope you found that useful. If you have any comments, polite comments, pop them on down below.